recording. Excellent. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Active Travel Cafe. We're delighted to have you all here today and joining us with our guest speakers, Lauren and Amy from MP Smarter Travel and Ranty Highwayman here for the good, the bad and the interesting later on. We'll get to more about our speakers soon, but shall we start with our weekly news roundup from the floor? So if anyone's there with some news they'd like to share with everybody, please pop up your hand and let's hear the latest news. David, first up, off you go.
Right, two things really. I don't think we've updated you before about this. We've had a new mayor, Richard Parker, in the West Midlands since May, and he's finally come up with a scheme to replace Adam Tranter. And he's appointed two interesting people as part-time, very much one day a week commissioners. Matt MacDonald is Commissioner for Road Safety, which is what my boss used to call a courageous appointment, because Matt's absolutely wonderful and he's the passionate, charismatic figure behind Better Streets for Birmingham and also Safer Streets Now. And he's somebody who can stop traffic just with his rhetoric, plus his children, plus his advisors, plus his friends, and have lie downs and things. So it's a courageous appointment. I look forward to seeing what he does, and he'll certainly push on the commitments that have been previously made about controlling traffic violence. And he's joined with Becky Marston, who once worked for Cyclist Touring Club years ago, and I've also known her with the Active Wellbeing Society. She's an excellent person, and she's more on the active travel side, but I don't think she's got a brief about sorting out infrastructure, which is something that Adam Tranter was very firm about. But anyway, we're really pleased about the appointments. It certainly will be good. And he's also set up an extra group on journeys, which is a novel thing to do, which I guess is about integrated transport. I don't really know. And there's to be helpers, not critics. But anyway, Phil Jones of our parish and Active Travel Cafe, you may remember him from a few weeks ago, who runs Phil Jones Associates, has joined that expert panel. So we're generally pleased about that. It's a bit of progress over nearly a year. Also, Roxanne, I gather you become a trustee of Cycling UK. Well done, you. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you very much.
I guess that's my news, isn't it? Thanks, David. Brilliant. Roger, would you like to share your news?
Thanks. Yes, Roger from No Traffic Future. Just to say, it's now 9 more days to have your say on the Integrated National Transport Strategy. No Traffic Future Alliance has made it easy to do so. Firstly, to email your MP. We, with whatever it is, over 300 new MPs in Parliament who are probably reading far too much of the Daily Mail and not hearing enough from constituents. There's bits of feedback that they're hearing more from the sort of donkey sanctuary charities than sort of the climate and nature sector, and therefore please do get emailing your MPs, making sure that they're hearing the noise that there is actually some public demand for a less car dependent world rather than for more roads, which seems to be what Rachel Reeves thinks. So I will pop a link in the chat. Please use that both to do the short and sweet action of emailing your MP, and then we've also provided suggestions for if you want to kind of go and fill in their full-blown call for ideas on their integrated national transport strategy. We provided some suggestions. There are different sets of questions depending on whether you're responding as an individual or as a group, and we've provided suggested possible answers for both sets of questions. So I'll pop the link in the chat. Do get responding. 9 days to go. And if for anyone who is going to their workshops, I hope that this will be useful for you too.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Roger. Mark, your news.
Thanks. Well, three brief things. One is that there's the rounded regional mode shift conferences. Somebody on Blue Sky commented that the seminars on the integrated transport that DFT are doing don't point out how people can cycle to them. And I raised that, and Mode Shift are going to take that up with the DFT. I remember the one at the Oval tells you how to drive there, for example. So Mode Shift, as the National Active Transport Travel Plan Group, are going to take that up with the DFT, saying how can you be promoting integrated transport if the only way you tell people how to get to your meetings is by driving. So who knows, but hopefully they'll make an impact on that one. The second one is those of us in areas like Sussex are now going to have a combined authority. And whilst that's not news because it's not necessarily happened yet, it'd be really good to talk to people like you who've had one and other areas and work out a way of, because this will be complete shock to people in areas that have not had them before. And we need to know what the best way to tackle our combined authority mayors or non-mayors will be, and how you've done it and what we can do. And maybe if you even had a session in the future about it, it'd be really, yeah, I see from Adam, who knows what the model will be? I mean, this is all rushed through really, really quickly, and it'll happen in next year. So we've got almost zero control over what it will be like, but we want to know how we can hit the ground, cycling, running, whatever, to work with them, because they won't know what they're doing. We won't know what they're doing. Who knows? And the third one is a bit of a local one in Brighton. We had a scrutiny panel last week, and if you want to look at Brighton Hove News, you'll see we had a 45-minute discussion on free parking or freezes in parking charges, and I got called all sorts of weird names for advocating that parking should go up by inflation. The motto of the council was essentially, we're taking less money because more people are cycling and walking and using buses, so therefore it's desperate, therefore we have to freeze our parking charges to encourage more people to drive. And I pointed out this is completely inconsistent with their policies, and they just said we need more money. So
interesting. Okay.
So again, if somebody's got experience of that, it'd be useful to talk about that sort of thing. Maybe Roger sometime.
Mark, I've got an interesting contact for you on that one. Let's follow up.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Graham, you're up for your news.
Yeah, actually some good news from Bolton for a change. We've had for the last 6 years a PSPO in place, Public Space Protection Order, across the town centre, and in particular in the fairly wide pedestrianised areas, cycling, skateboarding and scooting were banned. Those PSPOs come up for renewal every 3 years, so it came up for renewal this month. And there was a consultation, as there has to be. Now, I wrote a response from Walk Ride Greater Manchester, which basically said that the PSPO is excessive and it violates the statutory guidance on the use of PSPOs because it didn't target the specific activities that were antisocial. It was targeting activities like just cycling carefully, which are not antisocial, and said a lot of other things. The public health part of the council, again, as it has done in previous renewals, said that we're completely against the ban for the usual reasons, because walking, cycling, skating and all active travel is good for people. And I've heard unofficially now that that they have backed off from that in the renewed one and said that it's only antisocial behaviour whilst cycling, skating and scooting that will now be banned. We actually said in the response that we felt that antisocial, cycling, etc. Are already covered by the general provisions on antisocial behaviour, so why single them out for special treatment? So we would have liked it to have gone completely out of the thing, but at least we've got that we can actually now cycle in those parts of the town centre if we do it carefully.
Brilliant. I imagine there'll be other people keen to see your arguments and apply them in their own communities. So that's
I'll put a link to that in the chat.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Graham, and congratulations. Ailey, you're up. What's your news?
Hi there. So my news is to do with the London Cycling Campaign's Women's Network, who last week produced our second report, which was all about why don't women cycle after dark. It's not rocket science why women don't cycle after dark, but we did quite a lot of mapping of the TfL cycle routes, the designated cycle routes, and we found that 24% of them were no use for women to cycle after dark because they went along parks or canals or industrial estates. And 7 routes actually were completely unsafe. There were no safe segments on them at all, which included the Grand Union Canal, which goes through 5 boroughs who are all sitting there ticking boxes, but not actually doing anything. And the other one, one of the other ones is along the Greenway, which is a lovely cycle route in summer, but you wouldn't go along there at night on your own. So I'll put a link to the report in the chat. We did a good lot of media coverage about it, and TfL are going to look at our recommendations. So we wait and see what they actually do.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
And Chair's prerogative, is there a top recommendation from that report that can spark our interest that you could share with us now?
yeah, we want the criteria for cycle routes to include directness and social safety. And if those two things are not included, then it's not fit for purpose. So that was the key one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you for the report as well. Adam, your news.
Okay, this one's going to be good and bad bits. First of all, the council has, Baines Council has just made a low traffic neighbourhood or livable neighbourhood permanent. They also did a consultation on something called the Active Travel Master Plan, which is a little bit similar to the Oxfordshire Strategic Active Travel Network without the route prioritisation aspect, which they've noted they need to do. It's quite interesting reading the response report, and I'll put the link to that there, where 80% of all disabled people were opposed to walking and wheeling infrastructure for wheelchairs, and 93% of anonymous people were strongly opposed to anything to do with active travel. So it's really showing that some of these online sort of surveys and feedback things, there are some real problems there, and representative surveys and need to be considered better. And then Mark talking about metro mayors. R1 is standing down in May because he's the MP as well. However, the Labour candidate for it called on a particular bit of bus lanes on a dual carriageway to be removed because local people got angry about it. So he decided to cancel a whole 125 million infrastructure project that crossed from the heart of Bristol all the way into the heart of Bath. On a whim of this person, just to help them win some votes, despite thousands of houses being built along this corridor, jobs, etc. Yeah, and I'm not sure how this all works out. So yes, when it comes to the way you structure your combined authority, don't do it the way WECA has. Yeah, so other than that, it's all good. Oh, and of course, then they've just announced something called the Somer Valley Links, which is a link between Bath down to Radstock and up through all the way up. However, again, part of the CRSTS program problem, when they first spec'd it, they were told to cut back on things. It was too expensive. Now, the CRSTS program suddenly has found £60 million worth of money underspend, and it's now a contingency fund, and there's probably going to be more. So there's all of these projects which have gone through the outline business case, full business case, suddenly finding they can now bid for extra money, which again creates more paperwork, etc. So it's a very complex sort of space, but there's lots of interesting things happening around the CRSTS program, particularly for combined authorities. And I'm trying to get this all done in before the 20+7. Done.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Before I get to Robin, we've just had Ailey share news of the Women's Cycling Network report, but we've only had one woman share some news. So I'd really like to encourage, if we've got any other women here who've got some news or are new and just want to say hello, just want you to feel very welcome. I'd really like to invite someone else to share a bit of their news as well. Just so we can mix it up a bit. Otherwise, I'll just sit here and talk more so that we get gender balance. And we've heard enough from me anyway. I do talk too much. Okay, Robin, while we wait, hopefully for another hand, would you like to share your news, Robin?
And I thought Oxford and Cambridge was enough diversity. So it's county council budget day in Oxfordshire today, and even as we speak, the council is still in session. The Lib Dem Green is the leading ruling group, and so they've proposed a budget. The Conservatives have proposed an amendment which would strip out basically all of the discretionary active travel spending and spend £6 million extra on potholes instead. Which I describe, so I made an address this morning basically saying that was a load of rubbish. And the Labour have an amendment that makes some small tweaks, basically spending a bit more money close to the city instead of in rural areas, which the Lib Dems need the support of somebody to get enough votes, so they'll probably go for that one. The budget also contains some public realm works in St Giles, which is a big, very tarmac-heavy space in the centre of town that would really benefit from kind of greening and car park reduction, so that will probably go through. So that will be good. And all of this is in context of £1 billion of spending on roads over the next 5 years. It's just, you wouldn't believe how much money. The kind of active travel is about 50 million, and there's about £1 billion on roads, and the council still gets criticised for being anti-car and too woke. It's almost ridiculous.
Yeah. Sadly, Robin, I think everyone here would believe it.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah. And also, coming from Cambridge, where we're also facing a combined authority mayoral election in the coming months, so all eyes on the various policies and proposals coming up in Cambridgeshire as well. Brilliant. Right. Anyone else? Anyone who hasn't spoken before and just has a little burning thing they'd like to share? You're welcome. Doesn't have to be all technical policy. It can just be, here's a cool thing happening in my neighbourhood. Jill, thank you. Jill from Stevenage, please, would you like to share some of your news?
Yeah, I'm trying to make it so I can do it. Yeah, okay, you did inspire me, and it is a women's thing that when the Beryl bike report came out, it really was pretty horrendous on gender, and it said that women were less likely, and it was things about road danger was putting women off. And I did go on the LCC Women's Ride last Thursday, which was amazing in London. So what I'm doing next week in half-term week is I'm putting on some little breeze rides that are specifically Beryl tryout rides for women. And I've sort of flagged it up, sort of, if you thought about maybe trying one of these bikes, but, would like a bit of company to do it, and just help people just get over that little, not sure exactly how it works, don't want to feel silly doing it. And I've put them on just for 2 people at a time, and they're getting really filled up. So it's just a tiny little thing, and it just might sort of just encourage a few people. A lot of my sort of previous teacher friends are doing it with me, and I did wonder about it being something that could be done on International Women's Day, which is a Saturday coming up, and I'm contemplating doing the same again for then. So as I say, it's just a little idea that maybe could encourage people to do similar elsewhere.
Jill, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a great idea. And we say it's just a little thing, but you just reminded me that someone did that for me over a decade ago now, back in Australia, got me back on the bike and helped me in that sort of one-to-one way. And I've kind of taken it to extremes now. So you just never know what that little one-to-one actually could do in a chain reaction of impact. So sounds brilliant to me, and thank you for rounding us up nicely. So
sorry, can I just ask Roxy, because I wrote that report,
okay,
so I'm just conscious of what Jill said, and I didn't think I did that, but so I'd be interested to know what Jill meant when she said gender wasn't taken into account. Sorry, it's personal, but
no, it wasn't. It was the fact that it had looked at gender, and what it was reporting wasn't good. That the fact that women, so it wasn't anything wrong with the report. It was a very good report, bringing something in particular out. And my reaction is to what it brought out rather than anything else.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for misunderstanding you.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's learn more from some other inspirational women. So we mentioned that our guest speakers today are Amy and Lauren from MP Smarter Travel, and they are talking about their project from Lambeth, which just disappeared off my screen, so I can't get the very precise details. Too many things going. Sorry, Amy and Lauren, I had it already. Excellent. The Lambeth Accessibility Working Group project for Lambeth City Council. And double whammy here, because our own Ranty Highwayman, Mark, was also slightly involved in that project. So he's going to give us a little bit of commentary on that as well. But I think we'd really like to hear from Amy and Lauren now. So I hand the floor over to both of you. Thank you.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Yes, thanks so much for having us here today. It's really exciting for us to be able to talk about a project that we're really passionate about, that we've been working on for the last couple of years now. Quite crazy, actually, to say the last couple of years with Lambeth Council. My name's Lauren, and I have been working at MP Smarter Travel now for about 3 years, and working with Amy to deliver this project. If you haven't heard of us, MP Smarter Travel, we are a sustainable travel consultancy, and we are engagement and behaviour change specialists. So we work with lots of different members within the community to promote active travel and reduce barriers to active travel. And I'm going to pass over to Amy, who's going to talk more about this project. Amy's been our amazing project delivery lead on this project.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Yes, very excited to be here today to talk to everyone about this great project that we're working on with Lambeth Council. So a little bit about what an accessibility working group is. So our group consists currently of 10 members, each with a range of different impairment, and we work with them basically as expertise consultants of their lived experience about moving around Lambeth in particular for this project. And this project itself was set up by Lambeth Council in partnership with MP Smarter Travel in June of 2023. So we've been working with them for just over 18 months now, and continuing the project, which is great. And what we do is we facilitate discussions around inclusivity of Lambeth Council's proposed designs with the members, focusing on different infrastructure designs throughout the borough. We work with the members to identify different barriers to the proposed infrastructure designs that are experienced by many different disabled people living with a range of different impairments and disabilities. We then identify recommendations for inclusive improvements to these proposed designs, and we then work with Mark Philpotts, who technically reviews these recommendations to ensure that they comply and are aligned with planning regulation. So why we are so passionate about the project and why we think that accessibility working groups are so important is we've got the Equality Act, which is a legal duty to comply and to meet the needs of all members or all people that move through different boroughs every day. And we see this as a means to treat disability not as an afterthought. We want to proactively think about how we can make every area as inclusive for members to walk through, move through as they need to. There was a census done in 2021 which showed that 13.2% of individuals that live in London consider themselves disabled. This is 1 in 10 people that move through London every single day. So it's not a niche group. And we work with our accessibility working group members to bring forward different impairment needs so that we can make the areas as inclusive as possible. Saying this, disabled individuals in the UK make 38% fewer journeys than non-disabled people, showing that there is quite a gap in inclusive infrastructure, particularly around travel. And we want to work with making travel inclusive for everyone, whilst also working towards large targets like decarbonisation goals. And there's been some great work done showing that disabled people must be at the centre of developing collective access for active travel infrastructure. And basically our thoughts are, if you design infrastructure that is inclusive for disabled individuals, then you ensure that all infrastructure is inclusive for everyone that moves through. And not only is it important for the members that move through, but it also has a large economic impact as well. If you improve transport accessibility, it could also yield an annual economic benefit of £72 billion. This is because if you make transport inclusive for all, more people can enter and remain in the workforce, but also it allows people to move to high streets and shop at different shops and just really can aid the economy in a whole way. I would also like to just call on Mark to say a little bit and briefly touch on the importance of accessible infrastructure from a design point of view as well. Mark, if you want to say a few things.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I guess for me, it's one of the things I've had in my head for a long time about making things accessible for groups, makes it accessible for everybody. But I think with this particular project, it's given people a really good opportunity to go into the detail of how the schemes fit together. And I think the challenge we've had is here's me, an engineer that deals in drawings and plans and detail. it's taking that and translating it into formats that other people can understand. So, for example, we have developed tactile models to look at different things. So, continuous footways is one example. Simplified plans, simplified 3D drawing, stuff like that. Really, just so people can actually grasp what the designers are thinking, and so we can take things back. And as you'd expect, some of the feedback we've had overlaps, contradicts each other. So there's trade-offs and discussions to be had. But I think as a team, we've learned lots. I mean, I certainly have. Whether you can apply everything to every project, that's a different debate. So yeah, it's been fascinating, hasn't it, Amy and Lauren?
It has. We've definitely learned a lot. Just talking a bit about the specifics of our projects, so going into a bit more of the sort of day-to-day logistics. So we have monthly meetings with our members, and these are a combination of office-based meetings, but we do also do on-site visits as well. For the on-site visits, they're normally for sort of larger and longer projects, and what's great about those is it also gives Lambeth in particular, who we're working with, the opportunity to see current infrastructure barriers for disabled people as well, so that if they are going to make changes with their project, they can also tackle those infrastructure barriers at the same time. So we work on a whole range of projects, some that can be implemented throughout the borough, so more sort of policy-based projects. As Mark mentioned, we've done continuous footway design. We've also worked with Lambeth on their curbside strategy, and we've also touched on some driveway guidance as well, which can be implemented anywhere in the borough. We do also work on specific projects as well. Some of the projects that we have worked on are the Reimagine projects. We've done them at different stages. So we've worked on the Kennington Oval Reimagine project, which is currently in place, and they're looking at making it permanent. We've also worked on the Voltaire Road Reimagine project. We were there during a car-free day where they are testing out different traffic implementations. And then we've also worked on the Aberville Road Reimagine project, which is currently in the very early stages, where they haven't implemented anything and they just wanted to see current infrastructure issues. We've also done walking routes. We've done a walking route up Auckland Hill, and then we've also worked with the members on a few of the low traffic neighbourhoods, including the Stockwell and Slade Gardens LTNs and the Brixton Hill LTNs. And then not only have we worked on infrastructure-based projects, but we also do a few aesthetic-based projects. With this, we've worked on the Stretton Station and Russell Footpath project, and we also worked in collaboration with Sustrans on colourful crossings that were being implemented throughout Lambeth. So with the projects, we do often get quite a few themes that have come across. You know, we've done over 15 sessions now with our group, and we have sort of common accessibility themes that pop up. The main ones that come up quite often are colour contrast, particularly relating to members that have visual impairments. This sort of high colour contrast can help with identifying curbsides, crossings, and different barriers that could be in the way when moving through an area. Talking about barriers when moving through an area, pavement clutter comes up quite often. Things like bins and redundant poles and telephone boxes, things that can make it difficult for those in mobility scooters and those with visual impairments as well to move through the area. And we talk quite often about moving these off of the pavement. One of the other things that comes up quite a bit is the need for accessible seating. So everyone needs seating. It's often included in a lot of public realm consultations, and making it accessible for those with disabilities makes it accessible for all. Talking about also having it at regular intervals so that people can take rests when needed. And the last thing that comes up quite often is wayfinding, particularly those that have neurodivergency. It's a great way of showing where they are and how far things could be. And it is also a great way to brighten up an area when we talk about it in that way. Talking about some of the specific project that we've worked on and some of the influence that our members have had. One of the main projects that we've worked on with the members is the Kennington Oval Reimagine project. Our members collaborated with Lambeth on this in the final stages of the design before they were implemented, and Lambeth have made some adjustments before the designs went into into the oval. Some of the things that we spoke about was the seating. They have implemented a range of different seating types, some with armrests, some with backrests, some that are completely open, so that you can take a pick as to which seating works best for you. All of the seating also faces inwards to the pavement, so whilst not taking up space on the pavement, you are out of the way of the road, giving a sense of safety. And a lot of the seatings are combined with planters to just make the area a lot more lively and have high color contrasting colors around it. Talking of color, we also worked with the design that was implemented on the road, working with a lot of sort of high color contrast, fewer colors rather than more. We also worked with Lambeth to keep the crossing points clear of colors, as well as keeping the pavement clear of color as well, so that, you know, if you've got someone with, say, neurodivergency, you can have an area that's clear, so that they can move through the area and find their way. We also worked with Lambeth in the sense of making sure that the planters and the seating has high color contrast to the design. So if you've got a bright pink design, you won't have a bright pink planter next to it. You'll have something that is high color contrasted. The last sort of points that we worked with that the members suggested was removing some of the pavement clutter, like the rentable bikes. So all of the Lime bikes and forest bikes in the area have car bays now, or old car bays, so they are off of the pavement, and there is a clear site usage, so it is shown where cycles can be parked and where the play features are, so people can navigate through the area a lot easier. One of the other projects that we worked on Lambeth with the Accessibility Working Group is the Streatham Station Russell footpath design. So this was a design that members of the community created and implemented, and it's got in and it looks fantastic. And some of the things that the members spoke about was there were a lot of different icons that have been used on the walls. There were a few that did not have high color contrast, such as the purple ice skate that you can see. So these were replaced with higher contrasted icons that were also more easily identifiable, such as the bright red bus. We also spoke quite a bit about clear wayfinding, so having large letters that are of high color contrast, so it's easy to identify, and then also having a symbol that corresponds with that writing to show direction as well. And the last thing that we spoke about in this project was, again, talking about the street clutter. So lighting is obviously essential for moving through an area, but just having the lighting columns and making sure that they are highly contrasted against the painting on the wall so that they are also easily identifiable. And then the last project that I'm just going to quickly touch on is the low traffic neighborhoods. So like I've said, we've worked with quite a few different low traffic neighborhoods, some that are already implemented, some that we're looking at being implemented. And some of the points that sort of came up again were making sure that the sidewalks were clear, and that things like forest bikes were moved into the road, repurposing cycle bays, and making this area well known and easy to identify. Removing some of the redundant street clutter like poles, seeing if we can put trees off of the pavement into cycle bays, and then also with things like an LTN, having clear signage that's not only words but also has symbols, so it's easily identifiable to everyone that is moving through the area. Now, we were hoping to have Lambeth come and join us today, but unfortunately they were unable to. So I'm going to quickly, if I can, share what they had to say in a quick video that we have.
We had feedback from the Accessibility Working Group that kind of things like primary colours or bolder colours, things that didn't necessarily blend with the natural environment or existing street environment, are much easier to see, and we've deliberately kept every crossing point, so everywhere between two sets of drop curves is like clear and free of colour, and therefore a little bit more helpful for some visually impaired users. So this is one of the seats where we have the back and armrest. Some people need that to sit down to help kind of get on and off the bench, and they're facing inwards as well, so that when people are walking through this area on the pavement, they can just have a little rest. So it was really great to have the Accessibility Working Group input on this project. I think we learned so many things while we did this. So it was really good to get the accessibility group helping us to think about things kind of above and beyond some of the standard design guidance from the offset.
And then we've also got a quick clip from some of our members and what they had to say about being a part of the accessibility working group.
It's been good as well to like get the points of view and voices of people who may not necessarily be heard normally.
Make people feel like that they've got a chance to help make lives better in each London borough.
I mean, all people want entities to try and have a full life and get out and about and travel up and down the hills, you know, to get where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, and it makes me feel like we're really part of something, and it's like good to know that, you know, Lambeth are taking on board what we're saying, and it's good to see that some of the changes have already been implemented, and yeah, it makes me feel like, you know, some people are listening.
So as you can see, sort of very proud of the project that we've done with Lambeth, and we are excited to continue working with them for the future, really working on different projects. So that's just sort of a very quick introduction to what the project is. If you have any questions or like to get in contact with us about anything sort of further with the project, you are more than welcome to email us. I'll also put all of this in the chat afterwards. I have also written a blog about accessibility in London, which I will also put in the chat if you'd like to take a read. And the videos that I have shown you, it is a longer video about the Lambeth project with a few more of the Lambeth team talking about different projects that we've worked on. So you can watch the full video there as well. But that's a very quick touch on our project, and it'd be great to hear if you have any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Amy. That looks really inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your presentation, and for Lauren and Mark for chipping in as well. So I will urge our fabulous audience to put their questions in the Q&A if they can, or pop your hand up. Remember, if hand goes up, quick questions. Excellent. So I shall start. I think the bright colours really captured everybody's attention. So of course, there's going to be some questions about that. I suppose, did the bright colours create any backlash? Were there people who were maybe opposed to something so high contrast, or potentially to the scheme entirely? And also, I could add a bit to that. I've seen some videos and comments on social media in particular about the issues with guide dogs working out how to cross the road when there are the bright colours or different patterns. So you were talking about keeping some of those areas free from colour. I was wondering, does that still work, or do you still need the traditional zebra crossing, you know, for guide dogs to recognise? So backlash to colours, and also how does that work for guide dogs are the first two questions.
It's a great question, which a lot of members, as Mark said, you often have contrasting views from different members. Just, I guess, to split it in two different parts, talking about things like Kennington Oval, which is an area that is completely closed off to traffic. Their bright colours work quite well because the area is closed to traffic, so you often won't have people using it as main crossing points. Our members, from their feedback, enjoy the bright colours because of the high colour contrast, and they also enjoy the fact that the colours aren't traditionally used in road markings, so they know it's there for something else. When we did work with the members on the colourful crossing, a few of the points that came up was ensuring that the crossing design itself didn't represent a zebra crossing. So making sure that it looked something different. And if you are using it as a crossing space, to ensure that A, the colors are bright, and B, that the colors are minimal. So you're not having 20 different colors at a crossing point, but you're using 2 or 3. And the members really liked, if you're using it as a crossing point, to have a connection to know that it's a crossing point, such as footprints across, or a design that led to the understanding that it's a crossing point. I know that there has been a lot of work done with guide dogs and crossing points, which is why we always try to encourage that any road design is done on a closed road to traffic, that it wouldn't be a main crossing point.
Yes. Thank you, Amy. Jamie, I saw you had your hand up before. Did you want to ask your question in person?
I can do. You said not long ones. This is potentially a long one. So essentially, there's similar issues we've had where essentially there's clashes between disabled users groups. I would particularly highlight that visually impaired users have a habit of not liking cycles, and that causes some problems. So we have a group that's similar that's set up where I live, and that's become a very pro-car, anti-cycle group, which has not been very constructive. So, and I was very interested when you began, you talked about the composition of the group. And I was wondering how much you engineered that, and if so, how and to what, and how did that go?
So as I said, our group is made of 10 members, and we didn't go out and find them. We promoted it and let them sort of come to us. So it was anyone that identified as disabled that lived or worked within Lambeth Council. We did reach out to a few different organisations within Lambeth that suggested some members. And then the other ways that we sort of recruited members was we posted our flyers in doctor surgeries, which gave some of our members. And then just through word of mouth as well, a few of our members said, I have a friend that I have at this group, if they could join. So the members do have a wide range of impairments as well. We don't just have sort of one of each. We also have a range of ages, and all of our members that are within the group are not car dependent in the sense that they drive. All of them do try to get around using public transport. We've got some very independent members and then some not so independent members. But yes, we do have a few comments about the cycles that come up, especially from our visually impaired members.
Yeah. We have a question from John about, I guess, did you encounter this, or what did you do to keep motorbikes outside of these filtered areas? So allowing cycles, not allowing motorbikes, while also remaining accessible. And then supplementary to that, in doing those filters, how did you avoid backlash from drivers, car users?
So when we worked with Lambeth, particularly on the LTNs and the Reimagine projects that have road closures, we don't work with them in the sort of large instance of collaborating with those that use the area for driving. We work primarily just with the members and their experience through the areas. The LTNs, from what I understand, have the normal regulations that ensure that motorbikes don't drive through the area. But from our perspective, we didn't really interact with the drivers as such, and none of our members, as I mentioned, do drive, so we didn't have any comments from them on that part of it.
I guess then, what's through your process, you've sort of got that accessibility group. I guess then, and then you have the public. So how do you manage, I guess, if there is public backlash, how do members in your group feel? How do you keep them safe and feel like they're not going to get bullied when they go and socialize in their community and so on? So I guess there's the small consultation and then the big consultation. What's been your involvement in the different stages there?
So Lambeth Council themselves run the larger consultations for all of the projects, and then consult, I guess, separately with our group, and take their feedback in and use it alongside the main feedback that they get from the public, to change or to look at different recommendations and implement those that they feel suits the needs of everyone. Our members also know that the group is a safe space. They can say to us everything that they are thinking without having to worry about us coming back saying it's not possible. Everything that we say, we do pass on to the council, and then it's on their desk to make the decisions as to what they think will work best for everyone.
Thanks, Amy. And I think we've got a good comment here from Ryan. As a guide dog owner working with the active travel team in TFW, I just wanted to share that we are not all opposed to cyclists. It all comes down to early engagement. And I would absolutely agree, Ryan. And sometimes I think all of us are victims to actually others who like to stir up differences between us when actually we've got far, 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 far more in common. And often we're not given those groups like Amy's talking about where we can do that early engagement together. So I think that's a really good point. And I know that I follow a few guide dog owners on social media, as I mentioned, because I think I just want to make sure I'm being as informed as possible as well. But yeah, early engagement, absolutely. Any other questions for Amy or Lauren or Mark on accessibility and this project or the general approach? I think this is a sign of a very thorough presentation. You're not getting a grilling at all, which is brilliant. There we go. Adam's got his hand up. Adam, would you like to
The
ask?
only one I was going to say was that there is, I've had some of the surveys that we get back. There seems to be almost a thing where disabled groups or groups that represent disabled people are coming at active travel in a really negative way, and it's almost ingrained, and it becomes how do you kind of solve the fact that other people will then latch onto that as a reason for opposing some of these spaces, some of these interventions, because yes, if you're not in a car, they treat their car as a personal mobility device, which is understandable. My wife, she has a blue badge, so I understand the whole narratives around that, and the pain it causes by being not being very close to places and being able to walk 50 meters is very painful. But I also can see that the kind of, it's almost like they want to push the whole of society to using cars. And I don't know how you kind of create that positive narrative around this. How do you do that?
I mean, you're not going to have everyone loving every single proposal that the council puts out. So you do, we do have some people that are not as positive as others are, because we have such a wide group. What I think really works with doing it in a group is people can see impairments from different perspectives as well. So, I mean, we always say to our members, we're not trying to take away car journeys. We understand that there are necessary car journeys that have to be made. But if you were to move through this area actively, what would make it easier for you? And what really works with our group is once you've had sort of individual discussions about a certain aspect of the proposed design, is coming back as a main group and talking amongst everyone about something that they liked or something that they would change. And a lot of our members find that, oh, I didn't actually think that, all of these car parking spaces might be harmful for a wheelchair user because they can't see if they're crossing the road. And it really opens up their eyes and sees, and they can see different perspectives from different impairments. And that's really allowed them to I guess, widen their view and take that into consideration.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, last question goes to you, Mark.
Well, just to make the point that Adam just made, that this parking debate last week, there was a whole discussion about disabled drivers and how disabled people must drive because they can't get around by any other forms of transport. And now, obviously, that's probably less so in London, but that view definitely was the view of a lot of the elected councillors in Brighton and Hove, is that you must allow driving because anything that restricts driving is anti-disabled. So did you get that? Anything like that? I mean, London is a different case, but was that an issue?
We've had a few comments from the members, particularly in projects such as LTNs, just, if I was moving through here and I had to use a car, how would I be able to do it? And I think just having a clear communication with the council as to if it were to be an issue, we always say to them, you will have access, if I'm just talking about an LTN, to a filter you would be able to drive through. And if they are looking at things like the curbside strategy, ensuring that those disabled bays are not the bays that are going to be taken away. Those are the ones that are going to stay. It's the other bays that would be taken away if it is. And just again, reiterating the idea that we understand that you sometimes do need to drive, but if you were to move through this area in an active form, wheeling, walking, cycling, what would make it easiest for you in that sense?
Thank you very much, Amy. Really great presentation and seeing some thumbs up, and you've shared with us how we can go and find out more information or ask you some questions. And thank you also to Lauren and Mark for chipping in. So we now move on to the next stage of our gathering this evening, and that is the good, the bad, and the interesting. And if anyone's got any clue about what's been happening on my patch in Cambridge, I'm very, very enthusiastically listening to Mark's session about bus gates. Over to you, Mark.
Great, here we go. So yeah, we're talking about bus gates. A very, very narrow definition actually, and I think people get confused about what a bus gate is, but I'll talk about some of the other things in just a second. So yeah, before I get into a bit of text and description, here's a picture of a bus gate in the distance here, with the bus has just been through it. And it kind of shows the big challenge we often have with bus gate schemes is what we're essentially trying to do is to allow buses to take the direct line through somewhere, shortest journey through an area, and then drivers have to go around the long way. And when you've got a dead straight road, it's really hard to make it look like it's not a place to drive through. So I'll pick up on that a couple of times as we go through. So if we really want to get to the purity of it, we can go to chapter 3 of the Traffic Signs Manual, paragraph 973. And actually, I'm only going to say a bus gate is a short length of bus-only street. That's what it is. There's all different ways you can construct it, as it says in the rest of the text, but that's what a bus gate is. You can put it at a junction, you can put it partway along a road, and you can allow vehicles other than buses to use the bus gate through your traffic order. So here is some examples from chapter 3 of the Traffic Signs Manual. So on the left is your side road bus gate. And this particular example, the bus gate is going up the screen and general traffic is coming down the screen. The one on the right-hand side is a little tiny street connecting two others together. And where this one works really well is you can just see kind of the through traffic route is very, very obvious to drivers. You've got the middle lane marking, some signs on the approach, but that's the through route. It's pretty obvious. And so it's the bus drivers turning off to go through. That's what we really want to try and get if we can, because if you're driving along, you're under a bit of pressure, maybe you're worried about going through a bus gate. If you're naturally taken away from it, then hopefully that gives us a better design, but it's easier said than done. Now, bus gate as a thing, as a properly described thing, is actually quite new. 2016 is when it came into place. We had the bus gate road marking, which is optional. And the important thing is, if I just go back quickly, the important thing is the big blue traffic signs, which we've had for a very, very long time. So bus gate is essentially a shorthand of getting away from having to write on the ground bus and cycle symbol only, or taxi and tram and all sorts of other bits and pieces. So it's a bit of a shorthand, but people don't really understand what a bus gate is. Potentially we should have called it buses only or something else, but it's not bus only when you have cycles going through, and maybe taxis. So that's why bus gate has been called gate. But as I say, it is the signs, and I would say the actual design of the street, which is much more important than what we call the thing, perhaps. So just to confuse things even more, we have 6 variations here. They're all bus gate signs, or signs that are used for other things, including bus gates. But essentially, these blue signs to the average driver means you can't come through here anyway. So we're just reminding those who are allowed, which are taxis, motorcyclists, local buses. Effectively, that's to try and stop people who actually own coaches and things going through who shouldn't do. So it just gives us a bit of flexibility. And we can also add time plates with time periods, so they can be part-time. And we can add and authorised vehicles. So a popular exemption will be the local refuse service. You don't need to sign that. They know, they've been told by the local authority that they're allowed through. So that's what an authorised vehicle would be. And we have the same crop of these if trams are present, if buses are using the same road. So let's look at some examples. Funnily enough, a couple from my patch. This particular one here is at a regional hospital. Actually, the subplate there that says only, we don't need that. This is just a bus gate which allows cycles through. That replaced some barriers. It's just going into private land. So the front of the bus is in the private area of the hospital. But the bus gate camera enforced was a great way of stopping people smashing through the barriers. Lots of disquiet about it. The local police got upset because we refused to give them non-emergency dispensation, and we told them to drive around the long way, but that's a different story. Here's a slightly zoomed in version of the one at the beginning. Completely correct. It's got the correct subplate there. This one actually does allow refuse vehicles to go through it. We can perhaps have a debate about that horrible red splodge on the ground there. It's a bit over the top, but that was put in after I designed it, so I'll blame others for that one. It does show the challenge, though. We're trying to narrow the road here to try and tell people something different going on. Ideally, maybe that island on the right-hand side should be much, much bigger. Also on the left-hand side, the one on the right-hand side could be pushed well away, so the buses would have to slalom through, which tries to put people off from driving through, but it is difficult. We've got this dead straight road. I mean, this was a developer-led scheme elsewhere, so maybe that side road there could have been the main drag through. But as far as I'm aware, since this one's gone in, there's been very high compliance anyway. That's what we're really after. So if we now go look at something which looks like a bus gate, but it technically isn't because it hasn't got the blue signs. This is College Lane in Hatfield. It has been much, much tidied up since I took this photograph, and it is now a proper bus gate. But at the time, there was a rising bollard, and this was a very, very quick link between University of Hertfordshire and Hatfield Town Centre. I've got Harfield, I've missed the T there. And general traffic has to go a very, very long way around elsewhere. So good use of it for prioritising public transport. Not sure about all the signs and the clutter though. We've already talked about Lambeth. Here's one in Railton Road down just near Brixton. Again, it's not actually a bus gate, and just between us here, the words bus gate shouldn't be used with this combination of signs. This is a no motor vehicle with a bus's exception. That's essentially what it is. Interestingly, this only operates in the direction we're looking. General traffic can come towards us on this one. It's quite a complicated local arrangement, but it works just to deal with the filtering and making sure larger vehicles can get through, because there must be an exemption here for that refuse truck. What the designers have tried to do here is, again, dissuade people from this being a through route. Maybe slightly more successful. It's certainly prettier than the one in Romford. I guess the issue here is the yellow lines draw people's eyes through the bus gate area or the restriction area. So again, it's really tricky to try and deal with this on a straight run. Here's another one, which is not a bus gate, Stoke Newton Church Street. But again, performing the same function, no motor vehicles. In this particular one, we're allowing local buses. So this is TfL services in this location. That permit identifier there is quite interesting because that's actually local blue badge holders who can move within this particular area as part of wider traffic neighbourhood. So it's just a way of saying, look, we've made the adjustment for the people that live there, but we're not letting everybody else with a blue badge drive through. Very, very nuanced and local work has gone on there. And then a little further away, Cheapside in the City of London. This is going to be upgraded if it hasn't already been. This was a bit of a COVID pop-up scheme. And you can see the no entry signs except cycles, except buses and cycles. That's not actually a permitted use of that combination. I won't go into the detail why, but essentially it's a bus gate. The reworked version of this, I think they're letting taxis through because they whinged a lot about it, but it has made that street much, much quieter. So fairly straightforward in terms of materials and what's been done there. And then let's look at a really nasty one. I think this is my last slide to round off. Again, we've got the only subplate. We don't really need that anymore. But here's the old-fashioned way of doing it, bus and cycles only through here, which is great. So as a cyclist, you come through, you get to here, and you're sent down into a pretty decent underpass, I have to say. Now, if you're going to drive through and you're not going to stop, then you really will be stopped as you hit these lovely, great rusty lumps of iron left in the road. A sump trap. So that is what a sump trap is. Been there for a very, very long time. It must be incredibly effective because you're only going to go through there once in your car, I think. And that is us for bus gates.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark. didn't realize, well, I think I did realize, but just seeing it spelt out how complicated it can be and all the various ways we might go about what sounds like a simple thing for a bus gate. So thank you for going through that. Without a doubt, we're going to have hands up for questions and the Q&A. So Adam was very hot off the mark there. Adam, would you like to ask your question?
I feel unfair because Cameron's asked in the Q&A feature, so you should get it first, but I'll ask it anyway. There are some councils which are doing this thing where they're allowing certain residents in. Are they doing that in a different way? Is that like resident, for example, limiting school streets, but only for resident parking zone people?
Yeah, if I reshare, let's just go back to that. We want that one, I think, don't we? If I just go back to that. Yeah, go back to this one here, Adam. So for this kind of thing, this is how you would do it. It would be a no motor vehicles prohibition, but you would have a permit scheme within that. So if it was like a school street,
so it's not a bus gate technically. It's
no, but a bus gate is the blue sign and the word bus gate.
Right. Okay. Fine. Yeah,
so it's just a different type of restriction. Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Right, next question from Cameron. We've got a no entry except buses type of bus gate. Is that permitted, or is it just the and cycles element that's not?
I suspect that's a really old one. I'd have to go and look into the books on whether they'd have to upgrade that by now. But yeah, no entry except buses was all the rage back in the day for bus stations and bus turnaround areas, stuff like that. So really, we shouldn't be using that. Certainly for a new project, we shouldn't be using that. But it depends on the age and the traffic order and everything else, like it always does.
Brilliant. Right, I'm going to come back to David's question from the chat, but I can see Mark shaking his head, and I'm sure Mark's got an opinion on this as well. So, Mark, would you like to come in?
Well, I've just put a photo of the wonderful one by Crawley FC, which has bollards, traffic lights, because the rising bollards get stuck sometimes, and no entry except buses, and a cycle parallel bypass, because you can't cycle through the bollards, even though you physically can, because it has traffic lights through there. So you'd be cycling through a red light. It's really massive but it's been renewed. And so I think the no entry except buses is still there. It's just not a good practice. It isn't outside. It isn't written out of TSRPD. It's just not good practice. But the one in Crawley is a masterpiece of overkill. If you want to come, everyone wants to come and see it sometime.
Did you put that in the chat, Mark? Have you?
Yeah, there's a photo in the chat and the link somewhere.
I'll have to scroll up there.
Yeah. So, Mark, there's some other questions in the chat, but I was wondering if you could elaborate. We're sort of saying some of these schemes aren't permitted. So, what's the consequences because of that? Or what should we be doing if we are discovering these schemes that aren't quite getting it right?
I mean, really, local authorities should be designing stuff in accordance with the rules. I mean, the step back from this is the general approach to design. So if you can design a bus gate or a bus gate thing that the through route takes drivers away from getting it wrong, that's where we should be going. To try and rely solely on signs is always going to upset people. You can say, oh, but people should understand the signs and take action. Well, if that was true, we'd have no speeding anywhere. So design is always greater than signs, but bus gates are hard because the space to physically make it difficult is awkward because buses are so big. But if one is old and it's done to old regulations and the traffic was there, they're probably okay. If they put a new one in and it's not in accordance with the regulations, then strictly speaking, I mean, so if you're talking about somewhere like, I don't know, a bridge in Cambridge, if somebody gets it wrong there, you're going to have people who know what should happen, and they'll be very, very quickly onto the council. And what will happen is people will go to the tribunal, and they'll win because the tribunal normally comes down on the side of the driver if there's any whiff of it being confusing. So it's really important to get this stuff right, get it double checked. It's not easy, it's confusing often, and I'm meant to understand the big book of signs, and I have to go and check stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add something?
Not much chance of that getting in a place like Cambridge because it will go straight to judicial review. Mark, I want to make sure we get through some other questions, but I'll bring you in.
Well, it's a question. It's a response to a question.
Okay, quickly.
Yeah, somebody from Lindsay said about bus gate camera enforcement, and somebody responded with moving traffic offences. Bus gate cameras are different from moving traffic cameras. They are a different piece of secondary legislation. They're not the same. So Brighton has cameras on bus gates. It doesn't have cameras for school streets.
Okay, brilliant. So talking about equipment, David says the Hatfield example has changed from bollards to camera enforcement due to bollard reliability. Have bollards had their day?
Well, the main problem with the UK is we don't maintain anything. That's why they've had the day. Go to the Netherlands, they still put them in with bollards. You pay your money, you take your choice.
Yeah.
We take your chance, maybe.
There we go. Right, question from Kate. If permit holder drives through, do others follow them? So I guess that just, not paying attention, following the car in front of you and having people.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's certainly a risk, which is again why if you have to make a conscious decision to get through somewhere where you're allowed to, that's much better than having this kind of autopilot follow people through. But yeah, I'm sure people have got caught out that way. Maybe they should pay a bit more attention, but I'm convinced a lot of this is down to the design.
Yeah. Elizabeth says, why do we care what signage is being used if it does the same thing? I guess we've somewhat answered this with knowing people will pick it up. So can it be enforced? Is it the same thing, sending other traffic around and letting buses through, thus reducing general traffic? So do we care? Yeah.
It should be simpler than it is, but we have to get it right. Otherwise, it's not effective.
Yeah, brilliant. Bev, I will come to your question. Right, John has said, have you heard about the St Ives, Cambridgeshire bus gate, which has trapped hundreds of car drivers in a big hole in the carriageway? Is there a better solution which stops cars getting trapped and blocking the guided busway to Cambridge? So we end up with a bus gate, which is cars blocking the busway because they're in a big hole.
Is that the one it's got a really weird driveway at the end of it? Then you get to the trap.
Yeah, we've actually got a number of them in Cambridgeshire to sort of stop cars going on the busway, but for some reason it seems GPS apps were sending people down the busway. And once you're down a bit, you sort of end up either having to reverse quite a way out, or people take their chances and go over the hole.
And where there's trams, people are turning left across tram tracks.
Yeah.
You can't design out every single idiot, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I guess that comes back to, you could do a bollard, but there's no maintenance. So
I mean, maybe the answer in those is accept that some people take a chance and stick a camera up. The problem comes where there are people that go out there, they'll cover number plates up. We've seen it all over London with the LTNs done with cameras. So things which look a bit scary. I mean, the Bracknell one is brilliant because you're only going to do it once.
Well, can I just say there, Mark, the St Ives bus gate's been trapping cars for about the last 15 years. I mean, it's obviously enormous signage saying bus gates only, but, people are also part of this. But it's causing hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage to cars, many of them like, poor little old men and little old ladies. And I do feel quite sorry for them. Plus, it blocks the busway as well. It must be a better solution, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect with some of these that because they've tried to squeeze them in with existing, housing or road layouts and stuff like that, maybe the answer is actually somebody has to put some money up and actually do something a bit more comprehensive. But that's easier said than done, I guess.
Okay, right. Are the sump traps an issue for non-standard bikes, trikes, recumbents, etc.? So I guess we've seen cars getting stuck in the holes. Do we have issues with any of these bus gates for non-standard bikes?
Yeah, I mean, with that Bracknell example, the cycle route actually goes under the road, the separate provision. So we should never put cycles through anything with those kind of sump breakers. If it's a rising bollard, then the same rules apply. Let's have that metre and a half of clear space between anything. So that's fine.
Yeah, okay. So Cameron asks, if there is an existing outdated design in place, what might trigger the need to replace it with the latest standard? So if there's a local road regeneration scheme or maintenance or something like that, what makes us need to update
Yeah, I mean, there's one in particular near where I am, which was just a little bus turnaround. That was a no entry except buses variant. We were doing a public realm scheme, resurfacing, doing footways up and everything. And yeah, we went back in there and checked the traffic order and put the modern signs in to look tidier.
Yeah, yeah.
But we should do that. Anything we do, we should be doing it.
That's what I was thinking is being, that's part of maintenance, isn't it?
Yeah,
Being
should be.
proactive
Yeah,
about
yeah.
updating things might make things easier for the council as well. Brilliant. Bev asked a question. I thought you might want to share your presentation again. So there was an unusual sign under the camera sign on the Railton Road scheme. What was it?
Oh, right. Hang on a second. I've just turned my presentation off. Isn't that cool?
Well, I left it to the end because I thought we might have some.
Right, give me 2 seconds because.
So while you're doing that, I'll say last call for questions if anyone's got any burning Busgate queries.
Right, here we are. We're coming back. I'll just find it, then I'll share.
Brilliant. What did Bev spot?
What did she spot? Let's have a look. She probably spotted the cycleway sign. Let me. Oh dear, hang on.
We've put you under the spot there.
No, because I video minimized. So let's try and find the right screen. There we are. Let's show that one again. I think it was this one.
Bev, do you want to give us an indication? Is that the sign you were looking at? Let's have a look in the chat. I can't see anything, so we'll have to assume. Bev says that's the bunny. Yes, that is the unusual sign.
Yeah, that's TfL cycleway branded route identifier.
Yeah.
That's all that one is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible colours.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how you find the cycle routes around London. Brilliant. Okay, well, are there any other questions, or are we absolutely full to the brim with the latest knowledge about bus gates until it changes again? Brilliant. I'm not going to ask you, Mark, if you've got any opinions on the Cambridge one, because right now we don't want to know.
Well, it's great, obviously.
Just don't raise anything. Brilliant. Well, from the absolute latest word on bus gates to the history of cycling. So if you're joining us next week, you can look forward to Neil Carter, who is the academic and author of Cycling and the British, A Modern History. And he will be sharing some of the findings of his research into the history of cycling. So I think there'll be a nice one before I think we have a little break. So look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks again to all our guest speakers, everyone who shared news and asked questions, or who joined us and followed along. But yes, I will say good night to you all. Thank you. Bye.